Ever notice how the calmest person in a crisis is usually the one who's already survived 10 worse ones? Yeah, there's actual science behind that. And what I'm about to tell you will completely change how you see the people around you. Here's something that'll mess with your head. The people who've been through absolute hell are often the ones who seem the most unbothered. Not numb, not broken, just operating on a completely different wavelength than everyone else. Someone spills coffee on their laptop, they're already laughing about it while everyone else is having a meltdown. Not because they don't care, but because their brain has literally been rewired to ask one simple question. Is anyone dying? No? Then we're good. And here's the part that sounds fake, but isn't. Neuroscience research shows that people who've experienced significant adversity actually develop enhanced pattern recognition in their prefrontal cortex. Translation: their brain becomes an emotional decoder ring. They can read a room faster than most people can read a text message. You change your tone slightly, they caught it 3 words ago. That "I'm fine" you just said? Yeah, they already know you're not, and they're mentally calculating the exact right moment to check in without making it awkward. But let's talk about what actually happens when someone goes through too much. And I mean the kind of too much that doesn't fit into neat therapy sound bites. Their nervous system essentially becomes a threat detection algorithm running 24/7. There's this thing called neuroception, which is basically your body scanning for danger before your conscious mind even knows what's happening. That friend who always sits facing the door? That's not a quirk. That's a nervous system that learned the hard way that safety requires constant surveillance. That person who has backup plans for their backup plans? They're not paranoid. They're someone whose world fell apart once, and their brain swore it would never be caught off guard again. Here's where it gets beautiful, though. This same hypervigilance that sounds like a curse, it transforms into something remarkable: radical empathy. They've become fluent in the language of suffering. They can spot someone struggling from across a room because they've memorized every dialect of pain. The fake laugh, the tight smile, the "I'm just tired" that actually means "I'm drowning." Research shows that trauma survivors often score higher on empathy measures than people who haven't experienced significant hardship. They don't just sympathize, they remember what it feels like to be in that specific darkness. Now, here's the plot twist nobody tells you about. These same people who are so attuned to everyone else's pain, they'll downplay their own suffering like it's an Olympic sport. "Oh, it wasn't that bad. Other people have it worse. I'm totally fine." It's like they developed an allergic reaction to being perceived as a victim, because in their experience, vulnerability came with consequences. Showing weakness meant something bad happened next, so they learned to be okay, even when they weren't. Studies show that trauma survivors often have the hardest time extending kindness to themselves, even while being extraordinarily kind to others. They'll show up for you at 3 in the morning without hesitation, but ask them to admit they're struggling, suddenly they're busier than a one-armed paper hanger. And relationships? Oh, this is where it gets complicated. They become either fiercely loyal or strategically distant, sometimes both at once, which is as confusing as it sounds. They'll be your most devoted friend while simultaneously keeping you at arm's length emotionally. Why? Because closeness has historically come with a price tag their nervous system remembers, even if their mind wants to forget. But here's what nobody prepared me for: the humor. The jokes these people make are chef's kiss level dark comedy. And it's not about being edgy or insensitive. It's about reclaiming power. Every joke is a tiny rebellion. Every laugh at their own pain is them saying, "You tried to break me, but I'm the one telling the story now." Comedy becomes armor. Sarcasm becomes a superpower. It's emotional judo, taking the weight of trauma and flipping it into something you control. And then there's this concept that changed everything for me: post-traumatic growth. Research found that 50 to 70% of trauma survivors don't just recover, they experience profound positive changes. Their relationships deepen, their priorities crystallize, they develop an almost supernatural appreciation for ordinary moments. They'll tear up at a sunset and won't even apologize for it. They'll get emotional about good coffee, genuine laughter, or someone just showing up when they said they would, because they know how rare real goodness actually is. But underneath all of this, the humor, the resilience, the wisdom, there's a grief most people never acknowledge. They're not just grieving what happened to them, they're grieving who they could have been. The version who trusted easily, the version who didn't mentally rehearse every conversation, the version who entered rooms without immediately calculating exit strategies, the version who felt light. How do you mourn a self you barely remember? How do you explain you're homesick for a version of yourself that only existed before everything changed? There's this concept in psychology called ambiguous loss, grief for something that's not fully gone, but fundamentally altered. That's what they carry. They're walking through a life where they survived, but some essential softness didn't make the journey with them. And nobody talks about this. Everyone celebrates the strength, the resilience, the growth, but who acknowledges the cost? They learned to survive in the dark, but sometimes they miss the version of themselves who never had to learn that skill in the first place. Here's the truth that breaks my heart and puts it back together at the same time. These people didn't choose this wisdom. It was forced upon them, one impossible moment at a time. But somehow, and this is the remarkable part, they transformed survival into insight. They turned their pain into a compass that helps others navigate their own darkness. They became the lighthouse in the storm, not because life was gentle with them, but because they learned to navigate conditions that would have capsized others. And a lighthouse doesn't shine because it never experienced darkness. It shines because it remembers what darkness feels like, because it knows what it's like to need guidance and receive none. Their strength isn't about never falling apart. It's about how many times they've reassembled themselves, even when the pieces don't fit the same way anymore, even when some pieces are missing entirely. So, the next time you meet someone who's oddly calm in chaos, who laughs at things that should hurt, who seems to understand you better than you understand yourself, just know they've earned every ounce of that wisdom. Every boundary is a lesson learned. Every joke is a battle won. Every moment of unexpected depth is proof that they went through too much, and somehow, against all odds, they're still here, still trying, still hoping, still finding reasons to believe in goodness even after experiencing its absence. That's not just psychology. That's not just survival. That's the most profound form of courage I've ever witnessed. If this resonated with you, subscribe so you don't miss what's next. And if you want to support these deeper conversations, join as a channel member. Your support means everything.